is not there. But you have to say let test be equal to and open a bracket like that. And the variables that you make should be inside those curly brackets. The more advanced coding you do, the more objects you make. So this concept is very important, to make an object. And inside this, the variables will be defined like this. You don't say let anymore. And instead of equal to, you put a colon. Instead of equal to, you'll have to put a colon. Right, so you'll have to say let test, or whatever name you want to give, be equal to open curly brackets. And inside those curly brackets, you define the variables. And after each one, you don't put a semicolon, you put a comma. And for the last one, you don't put a comma. So you say let test equals open curly brackets. And define the variables inside like this. So you say x will take the value of 100. Let v take the value of, say, 150. Y takes the value of 100, say. Now, if you ever think you made a mistake, just go to the top here and click on tidy the code. And automatically it will place everything in the right order. So if it gets too messy, just go to the top here and say tidy my code. All right, now let's see. If I say I want to make a shape, say an ellipse. And if I run this, do you think it will run? So now if I run this, look at the error I get. The error is x is not defined. Okay, so the program does not recognize the x which is inside the object. So now write down how to use these variables. And this is called the dot syntax. Very important, dot syntax. So does anyone know how to use this? No? All right, so this is what you do. Instead of x, you write down the object name first. You say test, and then you say dot x. So wherever the x is there, you'll have to say test dot x, like that. Similarly, over here, you can say test dot y, test dot, and so on. So this is the important bit here, to use the variables from an object. First, write down the name of the object dot the variable. So that if there are lots of variables, you know from which object they're coming from. Right? Very important, this thing. Now, if I run this, hopefully I should get an ellipse here. So every program from now, you'll have to either make an object or a vector, which we'll see in the next class. So don't just define a variable, make a object. Make sense? Right, one more thing for today, it'll be called the random function. Let's call it the random. Let me see if I have it here. Yeah. All right, so this is how it works. If I say test.x equals, so now you define the x to be 100 here, but in this function, you want it to take any random values. So you say let test.x be equal to, yeah, go. Look at the video later, yeah?
All right, thank you.
All right, this is how you use it. You say random and open a bracket. And just make a note, the random function has to be inside draw. Don't keep it outside, has to be inside draw. And then you give two numbers. So you say pick a random number between, say 100 and, what is the maximum number I told you for the colors or the shapes? What was it? 255. Yeah, that's the maximum value for the color. Let's make the ellipse a bit smaller. Or even a bit smaller. All right, now if I run this, let's see what happens. Look at that. It's kind of taking random values of x and plotting the ellipse at random points. And this can create a very good animation. So now can somebody help me here? Yeah, on the same line, because x is the x-axis. If I also do test.y equals to random, let's see, that's a good question. So if I do test.y equals random, and then I say take any points from 200 to 600 because it's the canvas length. And then run it again. Let's see what happens. Look at that, randomly it is creating points everywhere. Right, if you just want it to be red color so that it's visible. So let's make the background to 0. Yeah. Yeah. So the maximum value for a color is 255, but we are using it in both now. If you define another object just for the color, then don't give it more than 255. But since we are using it for both of them, you can put the highest value of the canvas. Now, even for this one, you can put 600, yeah, because we're using it for both. But define another object for color so that you don't give a value bigger than 255. Otherwise, it'll just be white. Okay, where were we? So we're making the background 0 and we want the color to be just red. So let this be, say, 200 and the others be less. And now if I run this, hopefully a better animation. Look at that. Right? So with the help of this, you can make a snowfall. Yeah, it may look like snow is falling. So if we just make it 0, we just make this 255. And make it move sideways as well. We'll see later on how to make this into a snowfall for animation. This is the basic idea. So now here's a question. You see how the ball is disappearing at each point. I want it to stay there. So once it comes on the screen, I want it to stay there and then go to the other one, then go to the other one. So you have like spots on the screen. Can anybody help me do that? Any ideas what to do for that? All right, so just make a note. If you want the shape to stay on the screen and not disappear after showing up, you will have to use the background inside setup. Very important, if you want the shape to stay there after it shows up and not disappear, keep the background in setup. If you keep it in draw, the shapes disappear. That's how this is designed. So now if I run this, let's make it more colorful. So let's not make it, let's make it more colors. And then say 20 for blue. Let this be 600 as well. Right, over here also you can put the width. Right, over here also you can put the width. So automatically it understands the number is 600. Now if there is width, that also should be a length or height. Okay, so the other one is called the height. Similarly, you can put height here. Now if I run this, hopefully colorful things will come on the screen, but they will stay there. Let's see. Okay, let's try the numbers. Oh, can you understand what is the error here? Can somebody tell me what is the error here? Why didn't it work there? Because it's always taking the number 600, right? Because height and width are both 600. So just give random numbers here. Give 0 to width and 0 to width. Look at that. Pretty cool. Makes sense? Why is this happening? Because the background, we moved to the setup. So look at that. Now, I'm not sure if we learned this, but in fill, you can put a fourth argument. So if I put another argument here, and I say I put 100 there, does anybody know what the fourth argument does? So in fill, I can put a fourth argument. Now the fourth argument stands for transparency. Just make a note. It means the color will be there, but it will be a bit transparent. So now if I run this, hopefully it looks a bit better. So look at that, it's a bit transparent. So you can kind of see the overlaps. Right, makes sense?
100 isn't the max. What's the
255 again is the max. Yeah. Okay, any question at the back? You can ask questions. One more important concept. It's called the random walk. So next question is called the random walk. So these are like the basics of coding that you have to know. What is a random walk? So the next one will be called random walk. So what will happen is a point will show up on the canvas and it will randomly walk. And you have to trace its steps. So if somebody is in art, is anybody doing art in the class? It creates abstract art, a random abstract art. So let's see how to do that. You can do it with the object. We'll do it without an object to make it simple. So you define two variables. So you say let x and let y, and you don't give any values there. And inside the setup, you give it value. So now you say let x be 100, y be 100. You don't give it outside, you give the value inside so that that point is fixed to begin with. Okay, and you do all of this. And I'm not sure if we learned this, but you give a point function. So it'll be called point. Point x comma y, that's it. And this should be inside draw, not outside, but inside draw. Now, if I run this, hopefully I see a point on the screen. I don't. So make the stroke to be, if I make it 255, look at that. You see a white point on the screen. Do you see it? It's right there. Okay, now let's write down how to make this point do a random walk. So how to do the random walk. For this, you define another variable. Let's call it W for walk. W for walk. Yeah. Here at the bottom. And everything should be between those two brackets. Not outside it. Everything should be between those two curly brackets. Yeah, they're curly. And for this W, you say, let this be random between, say, 0 to 4. These are the standard things, okay, 0 to 4, everything, but you can play around. So now what do you understand by this? Let W be between 0 to 4. It means it will take any value from 0 to 4. It can also take 0.6. We don't want that to happen. So we need another function which is called floor. And open a bracket and close the bracket. So what does it do if it gets 0.6? It will floor it down to 0. If you get 1.6, it will floor it down to 1, and so on. Make sense? The floor function rounds it down. Write it down. And then if you remember, we learned the switch earlier, right? One of the conditionals is switch. We have to start with switch. Open and close, and here you put W. And open and close a curly bracket like that. Does anybody remember switch? Can you take a look at the notes and tell me how does switch work? What should I put next? Very good. What should I put? Very good. You should say case. Right. Random between 0 to 4. What could be the first value? The lowest value. So you say case 0. And put a colon. And you say if case is 0, make the point move, say, to the left or right. So you say let x become minus minus. And then you put break. So it means if it moves, then you stop and then run the program again. What should be the second case? Case 1. Then let's move the y. You say y plus plus. How many cases there could be here? Case 0, case 1. Then case 2 and case. Can there be a case 4? It's between 0 and 4, so it will never take 4. It'll take 3.9, which will be rounded down to 3. Right. Yeah, x minus minus. Then let's put case 2. And let's move the x in the other direction. And the last case, let's move the y in another direction. And we need break at each point. Break. Break. And break. Just go up here and tidy your code. So now if I run this, the point will show up and we'll start doing a walk on the screen. So ready? Let's fingers crossed. Hopefully it runs. What if I want to make it start in the middle? Let's make it 200, 200, something in the middle. Run this. Let's see. Look at that. So this is called a random walk. So you've just created a life in a way. The life is moving according to your program. So this guy is walking by the way that you have designed it. And you just have to leave it. So just keep walking. And if you leave this after an hour or two, you'll create an amazing abstract art. To make it advanced, you can also add colors to this. So at each point, when it leaves a mark, it needs to leave a color, which we'll see that later a bit advanced. You can also make the walk random, right? We've designed it this way, but it can also be random. You can also have two walks together. Another guy needs to walk here. Another guy can walk here, and so on. When you practice, you'll have to make two random walks together. But the idea is the same. So look at that. These are called independent objects. You just made something which works on its own. Pretty cool if you think about it. Right, see if any questions on here. If not, we can stop here. Any questions?
For me, it's not working.
What is not working?
It says that there's a-
Yeah, we'll check when we practice now. All right, this much for today. Go to Blackboard, see if you can do the practice.